Well, hello, and thank you for joining us once more in the Map Room, where today we want to carry on talking about what we call our growth series. We've had a number of episodes where we've looked at some of the structural things you can put in place and some of the planning. And today, really, we want to talk about the how and how we can actually achieve this. So, for those of you who are maybe looking at growth forward in 2026, and you want to grow, but you're not sure where to start and how to do it, then hopefully our guest today is going to help you understand a little bit more. We always said when we started this podcast, we didn't want theorists. There's lots of people out there, particularly in this space, who will write a book, produce a video, whatever. And we like to say we like people who've been there and done it. So I'm delighted to say that our subject matter expert today has grown a team and, more importantly, the proposition behind that team from 0 up to 100 people, and then worked with, at that point, the appropriate board to deliver that plan, and at the same time become a qualified agile change manager. So hopefully we will get a chance to understand what that means. But first and foremost, a huge welcome into the Map Room for Freia Muehlenbein from the wonderfully named Birit. Freya, good morning to you. Thank you so much for taking your time to come and share your expertise with us today.
Good morning, Stuart. Thanks for having me, and well done for pronouncing my name. That was very good.
I
Got some good
tried.
German skills there.
I tried. I get worked up when people spell my name Stew. So what it
Yeah, I
must be
bet.
if they at least they pronounce it right. So hopefully I did that right. So I think probably what I wanted to sort of understand and maybe start with is there's a lot of, again, if we go back to books, there's lots of books. There's a famous, obviously, Simon Sinek, as we know, which is, the why, and lots of agencies are going to talk about the why and their purpose. But I'm really interested in your view on almost the why versus the how, because the ideas are one thing, but with respect, the ideas are nothing if you can't put that into execution. So help people understand your view on the how and how you've come into this kind of view on agency operations.
Yeah, sure. I think the defining the why and where the journey is going is, of course, the starting point for the how. So agencies need to know where the journey is going, especially founders. They need to understand what the plan is. Do I want to step out? Do I want to sell eventually? Do I want a management buyout? Do I just want to improve performance for now? Am I still loving it? Am I going to stay in this business until I'm sick of it? So I think the actual plan and the why and the books and all of that stuff super important. But I think personally, where I see the bigger struggle, especially with my clients, is to translate that into an actual plan, and that's usually where it falls down. And I think we all know agency life is or can be chaotic, and it's very fast. It's very fast changing. So your plan will always be on your mind, but you never implement it. And I think that's where the frustration comes in, not just from the founders or the senior leaders, but from the wider team. Quite often we present a strategy or some kind of long-term vision to the wider teams, and then it just never happens. So people just stop believing in it, and then they get a bit fed up with company updates and strategic updates when nothing ever happens. So I think I was always quite deep in the how. So like you said in the beginning, I've grown my own team from it just being me to 100 people. So I had to constantly think about, how do I keep this growing team profitable? How do I make it better? How do I bring in new service lines, new solutions for clients, new structures, new leadership setups? And then when I worked with the board of directors across the whole agency, again, the directors had the KPIs set out for the future, and they were all growth KPIs around client growth, retention, profit margins, feedback scores, all of that good stuff that we know needs to happen. But I was the one that had to translate those KPIs into actual change initiatives and then run around and make them happen. So the how for me is quite exciting. It's difficult. It can be very complex if you're in a bigger agency, but the how for me is the thing we need to get right to make any difference, to achieve growth, to perform better, to keep people happy, to keep clients happy. So I'm very, very passionate about it.
You sound it. Something you said there about, I have a view on KPIs very often that, again, there are lots of use the phrase experts in this field who will say these are the KPIs you need. And I've always been a believer in the KPIs that have worked for me have to be relevant and appropriate just for my business. If they're similar to someone else's, that's a separate issue. But you've said something there, which is, so there was a vision or there was a plan. And yes, we don't want the strategy fatigue that very often big, long plans get our teams into. But how relevant, when you started that journey, how relevant were your KPIs? Was it something that said, right, it's important you need to measure these things? Or is it about, you used the phrase translate there, is it about translating that vision and that goal into a set of KPIs, knowing that they may well change as you start to grow?
Yeah, so in that particular agency where I've grown that team, I absolutely had KPIs I had to achieve. I wouldn't say they were the be all and end all. I think because we were growing and we were riding a wave of a huge digital marketing trend, which was kind of digital PR, content marketing, social media to a point, viral campaigns. I definitely had a KPI around profitability. I had to keep my headcount correct to the point of we didn't want to over recruit, and this kind of growth wave would eventually stall and then we would end up with lots of spare capacity. I had my own KPIs around delivering our projects on time and within, the scope and the budgets we had agreed. But there was also a lot of flexibility because we were experimenting constantly.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the early days, we had a couple of viral campaigns and some of them would 100% definitely go over budget, but it was fine. Everyone was okay with that because it would prove a way of working or a concept or make a case study or keep a big brand really happy and impressed. So there was a degree of flexibility always, and definitely a mindset of trying things, experimenting, learning, being creative, having fun with the work that we're doing. So it wasn't rigid, but we had this, finance director who was very clear and helped everyone in the senior leadership team to understand, we can be flexible. We need to learn and experiment and have fun. But these are the numbers. And if the numbers don't happen in this way, this is the outcome, or, our forecast will change. And then that could mean we can't recruit, we can't give pay rises, we can't have the really cool parties and, staff perks that we always have. So there was definitely an awareness that we had to deliver within certain metrics, but never a rigid kind of super strict, or like a punishment if it didn't happen. We would always figure it out together. And I really like that. And I try to instill that with my agency clients now as well, as you don't want to lose the creativity and the experimentation, but you have to deliver certain value and KPIs to just survive in the agency, I guess.
I think it's that fascinating mix, isn't it? I think sometimes this is where, so very often as the sort of outsourced finance partner or the accountants in the conversation, we can be biased towards the KPIs because we have a view that the numbers don't lie and the numbers will get behind the information. But at the same time, as you said there, it's about recognizing, are they barometers or are they absolutes? Because you said something there which is interesting, that one of the areas that I've seen where very often this sort of long-term strategy does sort of fall apart and you do get the fatigue in, is that where do you draw the line between experimentation and results? Because very often the creatives will run away and do something and then it's someone else's job, and probably yours in that instance, to say, well, hang on a minute, guys, we've just got to look at this here. So were you taking, was the FD in your ear and then you trying to use a different narrative to your team, or were the numbers and the KPIs, etc., quite transparent with that team?
So it was pretty transparent. So, most of the team would be very aware that we have to hit certain targets in the team. So I never wanted my team, so digital PR, creatives, people doing outreach, getting placements, like they're not motivated by necessarily, profit numbers. That's not how they live. They want to do a good job. So I think we never encouraged over-servicing. We would never say, oh, just do what you need to do for the client. But if there was a campaign that was on the verge of doing something quite spectacular, we would sometimes take a hit and say, let's just keep going because this is really good. You could then either recoup some budget if it was a retainer from, the next month, or You could even have a discussion with the client to say, look, we don't want to stop now. Can we free up some more budget? There are always ways to keep things profitable. But we definitely had an underlying agreement within the department that we can't overservice. We can't just go over and spend as much time on things as we want. And it was very results driven. Back in the day it was anyway. So I don't know if you remember, like 15, 16 years ago, there was a huge focus on links and getting links.
Yeah.
Which
Backlinks, yeah.
luckily, very quickly, we took a different stance on it and made it into its digital PR, its visibility, it's driving traffic from the right places, being visible with audiences. But a lot of clients, of course, were focused on number of placements, which unfortunately sometimes is still happening now. But anyway, if you have targets on your back, let's say you have a day to deliver a certain target. If you haven't hit the target, you will spend more time because you have the target. So I think we just have to be careful to keep all of that in check, still stay profitable, not put people down and squeeze their creativity. But I think in that particular agency, we had a good balance of very clear guidelines on profit margins we need to hit, staying within delivery targets and scope, but then also having open conversations about, we've got this great idea here, but I have no budget. Can I do it anyway? And that's just great for clients and it's great for people. And if you discuss it and you look at the budget and maybe you are super profitable in 1 month and you can take a bit of a hit, I think that's fine because at the end of the day, we're creating value for clients. So if it fits within the KPIs, let's do it.
You're talking there about this link then between finance and operations. And I know that's how we first got to meet you when you first spoke with Paul. I think you have probably a similar bias to myself around the fact that operations and finance have to work close. They don't have to be the same. They have to work closely together because it is taking that whole, as you say, a metric is irrelevant unless it means somebody considers something and acts on that metric to get you where you want to. Talk to me about your view on the role of finance in the agency.
Yeah, absolutely one of the most important, if not the most important role, I would say. I'm saying that because I have worked with too many agencies who didn't have the financial rigor or reporting or the correct numbers, and then all the mistakes happen as a result of going blind. So even though I'm from an operations background in my early career, I was always strategic, always focused on KPIs and how to deliver them. So for me, the financial reporting and the KPIs attached to finance are the guiding principles for what operations people do. So if in your finance report, you can see gross profit, net profit, you can see your overheads, you can see if your headcount is too heavy. It's the role of operational people to translate and, to investigate what has happened between gross and net. And what can I change within my ways of working to bring those numbers back to the healthy margins that they need to be? So, within operations, we've got KPIs around client retention, client growth, a lifetime value of a client, margins we have to hit for clients. In project management, we have to deliver within the agreed scope. We have to learn how to scope accurately and quote accurately to deliver what the finance team has forecasted. So all of these financial forecasts are essentially the plan for operations. So I have to deliver a really great service to clients, but I have to do that with the numbers and forecasts given to me by the finance team. And that to me is the role of operations. Operations for me isn't just processes and people management. It's strategic thinking, financial thinking, bringing people on board with that, working with the teams to really figure out, okay, well, we're not profitable in this department. Why is that? What do you all think? Because the teams know.
Yes.
So we can bring them into these financial conversations. So for me, the finance and the operations function they need to be close, very, very close. They need to inform each other. The operations people need to work with the finance team to say, I think I know why we have this discrepancy between gross and net. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to fix it. So yeah, absolutely closely attached. And for me, the finance team is, absolutely crucial. If you don't have one and you just have an accountant, you often have a problem with growth because you don't know what's happening. You don't know where it's falling down. Yeah, you go blind.
I think it's that classic thing as well, isn't it? Is that I've said this, and like you, I was an operations director, and then I became biased towards finance when I became an MD. But it is that point of I used to often say it's the operations thing is almost the, and it doesn't really matter what industry you're in. I was a completely different industry, and it is that glue between this is what we're trying to do commercially, but this is what we've still got to deliver, and how do
Right.
you make those things happen? And it was this is why I think I came to the point of changing KPIs. You've said something there that is, if you start on a journey and ambition, if you're getting that feedback too late, and as we say, there are lots of agencies for whom they'll use a traditional accountant and therefore they rely on very often just statutory accounts sometimes at the year end or a review. And
Yes.
by that point,
Too
you
late.
don't know how far off course you've gone. We have something called 2-degree reporting for that reason. Every 90 days, are you still on that course? Because I'm a big believer in also checking, sometimes tweaking that reporting. Because you say what you think might be happening, you might go and do a little bit more digging and come back, and the finance report tells you actually maybe your gut feeling wasn't right. It was actually this over here, and then you need to measure it a little bit, don't you, to get the results coming back. Talk to me about the sort of common challenges you see in the space at the moment. So in terms of either people looking to grow their operation, one of the things I often see, Freya, is that they will have this, and you hit it on the head before about the headcount. They'll have a plan for growth, and very often they'll think that the growth has to all be in delivery. And very often they don't plan the support functions. You mentioned there about leadership team or other things that need to happen. Talk to me about the kind of challenges you've seen people either come across or the kind of challenges you help clients with.
There are so many common ones. I think it's always quite helpful to visualize the flow of work through the agency in different buckets. And that's usually where the different problems sit. So you have a lead that comes in. So your first problem might be it's not the right lead. We already know it's not the type of client that's going to tick the boxes, make us money, keep us happy, keep us growing. Then you've got the pitch process. So the KPI attached to that is pitch close rates. We want to win the work that lands on our desk. The challenges there are agencies aren't very good at pitching. They're not good at running the pitch process. They're not very good at tailoring their narrative and their win themes to the type of clients they're pitching to. Then we have scoping and quoting for a new piece of work. Super important to get it right further down the line. If our quote is wrong, if our scope is wrong, we will overservice, we will get frustrated, we won't hit the margins. Then we have client onboarding, setting guidelines out with the client. How do we handle out of scope? How do we work together? How do we integrate into each other's teams? What's our scope of work? Have we mutually agreed it? Again, further down the line, if you don't have that, it will come and bite you because clients will become demanding and pushy and they will get confused about what's been agreed. Then we have project management, where if we don't actually have proper project managers, it will be very tough to deliver the work in time, in scope, in budget, keep people organized. Then we have client services, where usually the problems are we can't hold on to clients. We're not delivering a proper strategic partnership service. Our NPS might be low, so clients aren't happy with us. We are, skills-wise, we're not able to grow our clients because our account managers aren't really account managers. They're just people handling projects, all the way through to invoicing. So I think if we look at these different buckets of what is happening at each stage, I always find it a bit easier to then make sense of where it's falling down. And if you then audit each bucket, you will see really quickly where the problems are. And the typical things in agencies are in one of those buckets or multiples of those buckets. So it's probably not, I can't say, at the moment it's this bucket or the big
Yeah.
trend is this bucket, but the common problems are we're not scoping and pricing correctly. Horrible start from day one. We often have hybrid roles in account management and project management. So these people often have to do both, which means they usually focus more on project management because that's where the fires are, that's where the day-to-day is. So we don't fulfill the account management responsibilities of keeping things profitable, commercial thinking, strategic growth, building a partnership with the client. And that's very, very common. Going over budget, over servicing, extremely common. Not having good systems, very common. Lots of different spreadsheets and data points that don't talk to each other. So these account teams don't know what's going on. So they can't pull back. They can't action anything. So I'm probably not answering your question here, but it's usually some kind of issue with we've grown and we've changed and we've lost track of how we do this in the best possible way.
That
And
makes that
then
that
suddenly,
makes that makes a lot of sense to me, Frei, saying that. And the visualization, as you say, of the buckets, and what I've seen, and I agree with everything you've said about some things that agencies are great at, some are not so good at. But it's also that ownership of that process. And as you said, you mentioned there about hybrid roles in sort of account management and project management. Sometimes the account managers think they've got to step in, but this is one of the areas that I see, particularly in growth, where growth stalls, is you have to maintain a commercial drive, and commercial have to trust delivery and vice versa, because the minute that the client services steps into that area, well, they're not looking for the next opportunity. They're not looking at how to grow that client. And it's that thing where very often we'll see an agency get very excited about a big win and then wonder why the life of that, you mentioned the classic lifetime value KPI at the outset, wonder why those things don't get hit, because actually it's just been managed wrongly. And as operations people, we will sit back and say, but I always say it's never the people, it's the process. Yes, you will have some issues where there will be some problems you have to deal with, but in the main, it's the process has fallen down. And I do like your analogy of the buckets, because I think it's about also understanding, does every bucket have an owner?
yes,
And then when we look at it, and the one thing we often talk about is looking at that bucket, and it doesn't matter if you've got holes in that bucket, it doesn't matter how many things you're going to put in it, you're going to lose things out, really.
exactly.
You mentioned there audits, and I appreciate that's not an accounting audit. When we first spoke, you spoke to me about growth and profitability audits. Give us an example of what's in a growth audit and how's that delivered.
Yeah, so agencies usually come to me because in the financial reporting or in whatever performance metrics they can see something's not right. So again, it could be about client retention, client growth, staff ratio. So they know they have spare capacity. They don't know how to keep people busy with the right type of work. Profits are down, all of that good stuff that we know. And I would basically nail down where the journey is going for this agency. So what is the plan? Why are you bringing me in? Is it that you want growth, or is it that you need to improve your current performance? Because those are very different things. And not every agency wants to or needs to grow, but they are thinking of ways to just deliver what they're doing more effectively, maybe take a bigger margin home to reinvest in their people, in innovation, in whatever the purpose is. So I want to nail down what's the whole point of trying to improve or grow or whatever the goal is. And then, exactly like you said, I ordered what's going on. So I have the kind of bucket approach of looking into each area of the agency, and I'll speak to the people within those areas. The first step is I'll get access to any data people have within each part of these buckets. So any reports, spreadsheets, maybe process documents. Sometimes I get access to things like Asana, project management systems, client growth plans, whatever I need access to. And then I'll do interviews and sessions with the key people within each of those areas. So if there's a problem with closing a pitch and we are not closing enough of them to grow, I will work with the sales team and the people involved in the pitch process to really figure out where is it not working, where are the mistakes. I'll look at the pitch decks, I'll look at the process. Then I might speak to the project management team and just the project managers to figure out, why are we so far off the original scope? Why are our planned versus actuals not aligning? So I basically just get input from the people that see it day to day. And to be honest with you, they usually know
Yes.
what's going on.
But very often they do that, though. Whose fault? It's their responsibility.
Exactly. And they know the reasons, so they can usually articulate really well. So if I speak to someone in client services and say, you have a target of 10% client growth this year, but at the moment we're actually in negative growth because we've lost clients. Tell me what's going on. And they will tell me that, well, actually, I am being sucked into the day-to-day constantly. I have to fix problems. I have to firefight. I'm basically a project manager at this point. Also, I'm not sure how to even do this. So yeah, it was announced that I have to grow my clients by 10%, but I don't know how to do that. What does that even mean? Is that just for one client? Do I have to achieve that across the board? Is it like an average across all my clients? They just don't know a lot of the time. So then I know what's going on. I know where to improve, and then I'll make a proper plan for each bucket, how to improve the way that we're working right now. And then I help the agency through that. So we'll come up with a proper plan how to see this through. And the plan is supported by the exact people that I interviewed. And if I don't bring those people in, it's probably going to fail. So I always try and make that clear from day one with my clients that actually I can't just work with the board of directors. I need to work with the people that own each area of the agency, and they need to feel like they're part of the change.
And I think you've said something really important for me there, which is it's about using your expertise and your knowledge to look at the systems and processes, but knowing that the people, as you said, they'll have the issues, but not the answers. They'll be able to tell you all the problems, but not the solutions. But what you're saying there, it's about getting them either to understand and deliver it, because I think one of the challenges we see very often is if there is either a goal, an ambition, or a problem, very often the agency owner will look for an external advisor such as you or I and think we've got some kind of magic fairy dust and come in and sprinkle it and it'll all change. And very often when we say, well, no, it's about helping, as you say, that commercial team do this or that delivery team do that. And I think the one you've said there about the account manager getting dragged into project management is very, very often the case. And it's very often the case about trust, delivery, not trusting commercial or vice versa. But I think the point of getting the people who live in the problem day to day to be part of that fix is crucial, because that's how you get lasting success, isn't it? If whether it's you or I, we can help somebody, but we can't be there all the time, and it's about leaving them in a better place than when you found them, and hopefully that team then can deliver it on. Give me an example of, and I appreciate this might be how long is a piece of string, because it will depend on the size of the agency. But how long would one of these audits take? You'll do the audit, you'll look at the issues, you'll make some recommendations to say, well, I think your priorities could be in this area. So depending on how much they want to either invest and or time they've got, you'll have an agreement with somebody. What does an engagement look like? How long does it take reasonably for that owner or that board to start seeing the progress?
So seeing the progress and doing the audit are different things, of course. So if it's a full growth audit, so I literally look into every part of the business. If the agency is fully available and the right people are available and I'm fully available, I can turn this around within like a month or 6 weeks. That includes the first session with the board to really define what the problem is, the goal is. The interviews, the review of processes, the writing the report, and then a face-to-face session to present the way forward. Making the change happens after that point. So usually I stick around for at least a number of months to work with the owner of each change and help them along to actually make these things happen. So it is really a how long is a piece of string type question, because if the agency falls back into old habits and the day-to-day takes over, it's not going to happen. If they're fully committed and we're freeing up time and we're making people, we're freeing people up to actually focus on this, and there's a whole agreement in the agency that we're gonna have 6 months here of absolutely nailing it and making changes so that our second half of the year looks different, then it will happen. So I think I've worked with clients where I was super impressed. They were absolutely on it, making changes left, right, and center, experimenting, trying things on clients. And you see the results probably within months. And others, it's absolutely stalled, and you can hold the hand as much as you want and hold them to account. If they can't deliver the work, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
I
tricky
think
to
the
answer.
key thing you've said is twofold there, isn't it? It's first of all, and as I said at the start of this, it's not just a theory. Here is a plan, but you have to be involved. I'm not giving you a neatly wrapped present that's going to fix all your problems. I'm going to give you a plan, but you said a few things there. They have to be open to it. They have to be engaged, and there does have to be that commitment, because I've seen it far too often where, and we've even seen it between O's is really committed to something and shareholder B isn't, and that can be really difficult. But I think the important thing is what you're saying there is it's about helping them understand. So an audit's about helping them understand it, or you understand and identify the issues, presenting that back, but also being available to support it. This is not Boston Consulting Group coming in with a
No,
500-page document that says good luck with that and it sits on the
no.
shelf for 5 years. It really interesting. I've spoken there about the use of an external advisor, and I know obviously we've been engaged with you where you want to either look at, well, I'm concerned already that this agency might not have the financial reporting that would help me, as in Frei, do your piece better. And I've spoken about sometimes the risk of when people reach out to external, they expect this magic fairy dust. If someone was to say to you, okay, how do we get the best out of bringing somebody in? How do we get the best out of an external advisor or support? What would your advice be then?
First of all, pick the right type of advisor in the first place. So there are lots of us out there, but we all do very different things. So for example, I don't call myself a non-exec director because that's not who I am. I'm also not an exited founder. So I have no experience of owning my own agency or selling one or stepping out of it. So I'm very much the how person. Whereas a lot of non-execs are more kind of defining with you what your future positioning is and where the strategic journey might be going, or how do we change direction completely for this
Yeah,
agency?
yeah,
But they don't like to then step into the how. So in fact, a lot of NEDs bring me in for the how because we complement each other really well. And I can bring non-exec directors in if I feel like this agency has no idea where the journey is going. So pick the right one for your challenge and then have your numbers ready, ideally. It's sometimes it's hard for me to do a good job if I can't see in the numbers where the problems are. And yes, you can get all the anecdotal feedback and you can kind of piece it together. But if I can't measure what my impact is, then they're just spending money on something that isn't tangible. So numbers, make sure that before you bring an advisor in, you have the right numbers, you have some better reporting in place, and I can support those for initial stages and make sure you get those numbers right. Make sure your data input is correct. So for example, if you do time tracking, if only 50% of the agency is doing it, then it's pointless. So just have a period of time where you get your numbers straight so you can kind of piece together the story a bit better for the consultant. If you have no idea how to even get the numbers, that's where you have to start. Get people who can get you the numbers. So either, like an external FD function or someone who can make your various spreadsheets talk to each other, like a data expert or someone who can build you a dashboard. And I think that's where you start. Then you bring in the right type of advisor and make sure you have time. You've committed to it. You take time. Your senior leadership is freed up. They're on board. You're not just bringing this random person into the
yeah.
boardroom. Communicate what's going on. Introduce that person to the wider team. Really make them part of who you are. And just commit to the time. Definitely.
I think that last one, ironically, is probably the biggest hurdle. Very often, as you said at the start, lots of the agencies are already busy. They'll have a desire for growth. At that point, not a plan in my use of the word plan. They'll have an ambition, but how to get that plan in? And I think your point of recognizing that it might not be any one external part. You might need a group of people, as you say. You might need help with your numbers. You might need help with the operations, as you've said there, or it might be a non-exec for other things. But it's about understanding that you're about to go on a journey, and you need to invest that time as well. And very often the problem, as you've said at the start, is as it starts to go off track, people lose a little bit of will. Or, I know I said I'd get all this done for you, Freya, but I've been really busy doing something else over here. And it's very frustrating to sit there and go, well, we had Caroline Canty on a while ago. He said the same thing, that, well, you told me you wanted this, and I'm holding up this mirror. What's the problem between it? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It is that almost commitment. The word is commitment. You said the word there, and that's it. It is
yeah,
about committing to yourself and to everyone else you're asking to help you.
yeah, it's commitment, but then also I would say our job as consultants and advisors, and that's also why I did a qualification in change management at some point, is to not overload this plan and then present it, and then everyone's just completely overwhelmed and thinks, there's no way I can make all of this happen. So my job often is, I can see all the different issues. I have to prioritize and I have to pick out a starting point. So in the first quarter, let's commit to 2 or 3 things that we can do really well, that we can start with, that we can try maybe on a few clients, or, where it doesn't take 6 months to move from where we are to where we need to be. What can we do in Q1 that is manageable, that kicks us off in the right direction? So I think we have to be careful as advisors not to overwhelm our clients by saying, well, here's the plan. Here's everything that's not going well with your agency. And it's a big job and it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And people, especially founders,
Yes.
they will look at that and think, no, thank you.
Very often, and there's a lesson for all of us, isn't there, where accountability is not always criticism. And very often a founder, as you say, will see it as criticism. They've invested all this time, effort, blood, sweat and tears in this business. And I'll sit there and say, well, this is where your buckets have got holes in. And very often you have to be clear about the difference between accountability and criticism. You mentioned I was fascinated about this. So an agile change manager, what is it? And was that because you thought, well, I just need an extra skill set to do this? Or was it something that you sort of went into as you went along?
So after I've grown my own department to 100 people, I moved to a different role where I was responsible for all the kind of strategic initiatives within the agency. So I had to take the board of directors, KPIs for growth, and then work with all the different senior leaders to actually make them happen. And I think I realized quite quickly that there was too much change and I couldn't quite move it along in the way that I thought I would in this role that I now had. So I started looking into change management and how to do it properly. And then I found a course delivered by this change management expert called Melanie Franklin. And I can highly recommend her books, her courses, her content. And it was quite an intense online course, lots of revisions. So kind of going back to university kind of thing, short term, where you basically learn from start to finish why change usually fails and how to do it right. And the agile change manager specifically is useful for agencies because we're very fast in agencies. While we're changing our ways of working, everything else changes, technology changes, AI
Consequences, yeah.
changes. So I think the agile approach essentially means we're not spending a year trying to deliver the perfect change in the way that we're working, because by that point we've changed it again already. So the agility is, how do you get the first part of change right? So involving the right people, the owners of each area of the business, making sure they feel part of it. They don't get defensive about change. They're basically owning the change. So stakeholder management, super important for agile change. And then essentially we're making small changes, quick small changes that each already have a positive impact on the agency. So for example, if we're not growing or retaining enough clients, I'm not saying, okay, let's do this huge change program where we give training and we change roles and we're doing all this stuff and it's going to take us 12 months to get there. Basically, in the first month, I'm working with the client services team, workshop style, figuring out how we can make changes. And then maybe in the second month, we're each picking one client and we're working as a group to figure out how we can grow this particular client. Then we learn from that. And then the next month we're doing something else. So every little change in turn creates value for the agency. So we're not waiting to implement something massive. We're learning as we go along. And this agile approach of change is great for agencies for that reason, because we need to be quite quick and nimble rather than old school style, massive
Exactly.
changes that take a year.
So that makes a lot of sense, because I think I can recognize that being really valuable now to a smaller agency, maybe more than when you said it was just 100 people. But I hear what you're saying now. It's about a process by which I can have lots of change going on, but I can manage it. But it's also about that people believing they are all going in the right direction. We spoke, or I mentioned the sort of project fatigue, and very often change fatigue comes in, and we tried that and it didn't work, and people say that to me. And so you've got to have the mindset. And I was fascinated to also see about this mental health first aider, so I can see that being part of it. Help me understand that, because particularly with today, the whole purpose of well-being and the importance of mental health. I'd not heard the phrase mental health first aider. I don't understand it, but I already love it. So just explain it to me, please.
So mental health first aid is essentially a training provided by Mental Health First Aid England. So anyone can have that training. I was very lucky that my old agency actually asked for volunteers who want to become mental health first aiders. And they basically train you in how to spot the signs of someone being unwell. They help you have the conversations with someone who is struggling so that you can kind of calm, I guess, the initial upset. They also teach you in very severe cases where to send people to get help. So my job as a mental health first aider isn't to fix their problem or to be a psychologist or psychiatrist, because that's not what I'm there for. It's essentially having an awareness of mental health issues, how to spot them, how to support people in the right way. And if you have a few mental health first aiders in your business, they can be the go-to for people that are struggling. It sets a message of, we don't want this and we want to be supportive. And for me, especially for delivering change, I need to be able to see when it's too much. And I'm
Change
very
is
lucky.
stressful, isn't it, Frei? Change is stressful for
Yeah,
everybody. We don't like, as human beings, we're not great at change. It's that simple. Yeah.
exactly. And it's very lucky, because when I work with agencies and I do my conversations with the wider team, people really open up to me, because I make it very clear that if they are upset, I will not communicate that. It's confidential. And I've had people cry in my sessions because no one's ever
No one,
talked to them about, well, what's going on. So I think you could do the mental health first aid training. You can also have lots of other training on just how to support people in stressful situations. And again, I was very lucky because my old agency head of people was amazing in giving all of that training. So I think hopefully I'm quite tuned in and I can spot when it's all too much for people.
when it's not read,
Yeah.
be read.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it's
Yeah.
not read.
Sorry. Yeah. When it's not right. Yeah.
I really think, as I say, I think today more than ever, I think that's a really important mix there, because you can have the big agency understanding, and you can have the thing that says, look, I can show you how to do this. But as I said before, I'm a big believer, when you break it down, it's the process rather than the people. But you have to have the people to then fix the process and maintain the process going forward. And I think that blend of having the operational experience, but with this mental health first aider, is a pretty unique mix, Frey. So I think that's well, obviously wish you well with it, but I think it's a brilliant
Yeah.
mix, because again, it takes, as I say, I'm not a fan of theorists, and that marries these things together, because you do need to bring the people on that journey with you. Talking of journeys, we are coming close to our time. I always try to keep these slightly under the hour, really. So I always say to everybody, look, if this has resonated with you, and that's whether that's these two areas, the either potentially understanding a little bit more about mental health side of things, or more importantly, how someone such as Frei can come in and maybe look at an operational audit for you. How does somebody find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So just look for my full name, Freia Muehlenbein. Look on my website, beright.com. Even my phone number, my WhatsApp is on there. So it's pretty easy to message me. And you might not know what you need, which is fine. Usually in the beginning, it's just a couple of conversations about what is going on. And then I can kind of gauge where I'm best fitting in. So yeah, just a chat, email, call, LinkedIn, whichever is your preferred medium. You just reach out.
Wonderful. Well, listen, it only remains me to say, obviously, thank you so much for your time. and I say this every time I do these, I am biased, but that's why I have guests on like yourself. I'm biased to the operational aspect and biased to the mix between, I'm not a finance professional, but that's why I became biased to mix finance and operations together, because it works. So I hope it's been of useful. I hope for anyone who's either tuned in or listened today, well, thank you for coming back into the map room, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks. Bye for now.